me take you right back to the start of the course. The first question, and if you like the overall question, is what's the connection between a thinker and the things her thoughts are about? And so far we've thought about that in terms of Russell's principle of acquaintance. We know what Russell's principle of acquaintance is. We've looked at cognitive penetration, and the idea there was that if cognition penetrates thought, perhaps we'd have a reason to reject Russell's principle. Although it looks like cognition doesn't penetrate thought to me. We also looked at the topic of perceptual awareness, and one thought there was this: if you can have perception without perceptual awareness, then we probably don't want to think about the relation between a thinker and the things her thoughts are about as fundamentally a matter of somehow being aware or conscious of things. We might think that perception is something more fundamental than perceptual awareness, since you can have perceptual without perceptual awareness. Now, none of these arguments, of course, are decisive or fully worked out. As I often like to remind you, you're the philosopher here, not me. My job is just to provide some pointers. But I do want to, in introducing our fourth topic, suggest that we may have been making a mistake. See, earlier I was cycling along, I was in the cycle lane actually, and a car pulled in right in front of me and stopped. Bam! So I hit the car. Now luckily I was okay, I was wearing a cycle helmet, very good idea to wear a cycle helmet, but the car less so. The car now has a nice Steve-shaped autograph in the back. Sorry about that, car. I couldn't stop in time. I blame the driver myself. Anyway, so the poor car has this connection to me now. What's the connection between me and the car? Well, you know, this sort of physical crashing. But we've been thinking about relation between thinkers and the things they're thinking about in much the same way. There's the thinker here, there's the object there. We just want to relate the two things together. In our fourth topic, what we're going to find out is that we need to do more than just relate the thinker to the object. We need to think of a more complicated framework. We need to introduce something that we're later going to call sense. The really difficult thing, though, is to see why that's necessary at all. So that's what we'll focus on. The way into this is to take a step back and consider more carefully than we have done so far the notion of a mental state. If I say to you, Ian believes Clark is in the library, I'm talking about a mental state that Ian has, in this case a belief. Or you might say, Steve desires that Clark fly. And again, you're talking about some kind of mental state that I have. Or, you know, we could say, Ayesha intends that Superman fly. Once again, that intention is a mental state. Now, for our purposes, it's helpful to think about mental states as having three key components. They have a subject, an attitude, and a content. Let's take a quick look at each of those. So the subject is the individual thing which bears the mental state. Questions about the subject of mental states are going to come up twice. They're going to come up once if you think about personal identity, the identity of the bearer of mental states. And they might also come up again if you ask the question of whether the subjects of mental states always have to be individuals, or whether there's any interesting and useful sense in which multiple individuals can be said collectively to have a mental state, like a desire or an intention. So if I say to you, we desire to eat dinner, am I talking about a mental state that we collectively have, one state, many people, or am I simply summarising a situation in which each of us desires that we have dinner? Okay. Anyway, subject of the mental state, that's the individual thing or set of things that bears the mental state. The attitude is something like believing, desiring, or intending. Attitudes are typically characterised by their functional and normative roles. So, for example, someone might say, look, the functional role of beliefs, putting it very simply, is to ensure that an agent's actions align with some facts, even when information about those facts is no longer available. So here's the great thing about belief. I'm over here and I encounter some information about where this delicious food is. Now I have to go away to another place. I no longer have the information about the food's location. But if I get hungry, I can still return to that place in the hope there's food there. That's the function of belief. It's allowing me to align my actions with the facts even though I have no current information about those facts at all. So this is a very simple example of how we might try very crudely to characterize functional roles of different attitudes and distinguish them. That's a big topic in philosophy, but it's not something that we're going to consider in this course at all. Now, the third component of a mental state is the content. So I might believe that Clark is in the library, whereas you believe that Clark is in the kitchen. So those two mental states are distinguished by having different contents, same attitude belief, but different contents. The idea here is that the content is what makes a belief true or false, what determines the conditions under which a desire will be satisfied or unsatisfied, an intention fulfilled and unfulfilled, and so on. One of the big topics for this course will be about the nature of the contents of mental states. That's the topic called sense and reference.